Chapter 1. Goodbye, Chaos. Diane Summers stared at the cardboard box in front of her like it had personally betrayed her. It wasn't the box's fault, of course. It was just sitting there, innocent and brown, waiting to be filled with the remnants of a life she was leaving behind. But the truth was, every time she taped one shut, it felt like sealing off a chapter she never wanted to reread. "Mommy, do we have to take the ugly lamp?" asked her 5-year-old son, Tyler, pointing at the brass monstrosity in the corner. His nose wrinkled like he'd just smelled broccoli. Diane sighed. "No, buddy. The ugly lamp stays." "Good," he said, satisfied, and went back to stacking his toy cars in a neat line across the hardwood floor. His sister, 4-year-old Lily, was perched on the couch, swinging her legs and humming a tune that sounded suspiciously like the theme song from a cartoon about talking vegetables. Diane glanced around the living room. It looked hollow already, walls stripped of family photos, shelves bare except for a few stubborn dust bunnies. The silence was louder than the chaos that had filled this house for years. She should have felt relief. Instead, her stomach churned like a washing machine on spin cycle. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't need to look to know who it was. The name flashing on the screen was burned into her memory like a bad tattoo. Rick. She ignored it. Again. Rick had been calling more often lately, probably because he'd heard through the grapevine that she was leaving. Not to apologize, of course. Rick didn't do apologies. He did excuses, and he did them well, usually with a beer in one hand and his phone in the other while sitting at some bar that smelled like regret. The last time they spoke, he laughed when she told him she was moving. Actually laughed. Said he was glad she was taking the brats somewhere else. Then he signed over his parental rights like he was giving away an old pair of sneakers. No fight, no drama, just a pen stroke and a smirk. Diane had expected anger, maybe even relief. What she felt was nothing, just a hollow ache where love used to live. She'd given up on fantasies about Rick years ago, long before the cheating and the bar hopping became public knowledge. The rose-colored glasses had shattered, and all she saw now was a man who cared more about happy hour than his own kids. She tightened the tape on the box and muttered under her breath, "Fresh start. No drama. Just peace." "Mommy?" Lily's voice was soft, curious. "Will there be dinosaurs at the new house?" Diane blinked, then laughed. A real laugh, the kind that felt rusty but good. "No dinosaurs, sweetheart. But there will be a playground." Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but if there's a dinosaur, I'll tell you." "Deal," Diane said, smiling. The decision to leave hadn't come easy. It started with a family meeting after her father nearly put Rick through a wall. Literally. When Dad found out about the cheating, he'd gone red-faced and lunged like a linebacker. Diane and her brother had to physically restrain him, which was saying something because her father was built like a retired lumberjack. Once they calmed him down, they sat around the kitchen table, the air thick with anger and disappointment. Diane had told them she couldn't do it anymore. The drama, the whispers, the constant reminder that her kids were growing up in a storm. Not because she was heartbroken. That ship had sailed long ago. She just wanted something better for Tyler and Lily. Something stable. Something safe. Her parents were sad, of course. They loved having her close, but they understood. They even helped her pack, slipping 20s into her purse when they thought she wasn't looking. Her mom cried when Diane loaded the last box into the car, but she smiled through the tears and said, "Go make a life, honey, a good one." Now, standing in the half-empty living room, Diane felt the weight of that promise. She was going to make a good life, even if it scared her half to death. "Mommy, I'm hungry," Tyler announced, breaking her reverie. "Of course you are," Diane said, glancing at the clock. It was nearly noon, and the kitchen was a graveyard of takeout containers. She rummaged through a bag and pulled out 2 granola bars. "Here, gourmet lunch." Tyler eyed the wrapper suspiciously. "Do they have pizza at the new house?" "They have pizza in the new town," Diane said. "And maybe even better pizza than here." He grinned. "Better pizza? Okay, let's go now." Diane chuckled, ruffling his hair. If only moving were that simple. The drive would be 3 hours, just far enough to feel like a new world, but close enough that her parents could visit without needing a plane ticket. The apartment complex she'd found was in a small town called Maplewood, the kind of place where people waved at strangers and kids rode bikes without fear. The listing had sounded almost too good to be true. Apartments designed for single parents, a courtyard with a playground, even a community garden. It felt like someone had built it with her in mind. And then there was the owner, Sean, 35, single, raised by a single mom. Diane had only spoken to him once on the phone, but his voice had been warm, steady, like a cup of coffee on a cold morning. He'd explained the rules clearly. Tenants had to be full-time custodians of their kids. No drama, no revolving doors of babysitters. "We're building a community," he'd said. "A safe place for families." Diane had liked that. A lot. She loaded the last box into the trunk and slammed it shut. The car sagged under the weight of her life, but it held. Tyler and Lily climbed into their booster seats, chattering about dinosaurs and pizza and whether the new town had a swimming pool. Diane slid behind the wheel and gripped the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the house she'd called home. The memories weren't all bad. There were birthdays and Christmas mornings, giggles and bedtime stories. But they were tangled up with shouting matches and slammed doors. With tears, she'd cried alone in the bathroom while the kids slept. She took a deep breath. Okay, guys. Ready for our adventure? Adventure, Lily squealed, clapping her hands. Tyler pumped a fist. Let's go find dinosaurs. Diane smiled, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. The house shrank in the rearview mirror until it was just a blur. Then nothing at all. The highway stretched ahead like a promise. Diane rolled down the window, letting the cold January air whip through her hair. It smelled like freedom, or maybe just exhaust fumes. Either way, it was better than the stale air of a life that had stopped feeling like hers. As the miles ticked by, her nerves began to settle. She pictured the apartment complex, the courtyard, the garden, the laughter of kids. She imagined Tyler and Lily running across the grass, their cheeks pink with joy. She imagined herself sitting under a gazebo with a book, sipping iced tea, feeling peaceful. And maybe, just maybe, she imagined a man with kind eyes and a crooked smile, fixing something near the basketball court. But she shoved that thought aside. Romance was the last thing on her mind. She had 2 kids, a car full of boxes, and a future to build. Love could wait. For now, all she wanted was a fresh start. Chapter 2. Welcome to Maplewood. The sign for Maplewood appeared like a promise at the edge of the highway. A cheerful green rectangle with white letters that seemed to say, "You made it. Breathe now." Diane exhaled slowly, her fingers loosening on the steering wheel. 3 hours of driving with 2 kids in the backseat had felt like a marathon through chaos. Is this it? Tyler pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass. Where's the pizza? Priorities, Diane muttered, smiling. We'll find pizza later. Lily clapped her hands. Do they have dinosaurs? Still no dinosaurs, Diane said, steering onto a tree-lined street. The town looked like something out of a postcard, brick storefronts, a bakery with a striped awning, a park with a frozen pond where kids skated in puffy coats. It was quiet, but not the eerie kind of quiet. More like the peaceful hum of a place that didn't need to shout to be heard. Her GPS chirped, turn left in 200 feet. Diane followed the instructions, her heart thudding as the apartment complex came into view. Maplewood Courtyard Apartments. 30 units forming a square around a central courtyard, just like the listing promised. The buildings were 2 stories, painted in warm earth tones, with balconies draped in string lights that twinkled even in daylight. The courtyard was the real showstopper. A playground with bright slides, a basketball hoop, a couple of gazebos, and a garden patch that looked dormant now but hinted at summer abundance. Whoa, Tyler breathed. This is like a park. It's our new home, Diane said softly, pulling into the parking lot. Her chest tightened. Not with fear this time, but something close to hope. She parked near the leasing office, which was tucked into the corner of the complex. A wooden sign above the door read "Welcome Home" in cheerful cursive. Diane unbuckled the kids and herded them toward the entrance, her boots crunching on gravel. The January air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and something sweet, maybe someone baking nearby. Inside, the office was cozy, with a fireplace flickering in the corner and a coffee station that smelled like heaven. A woman in her 60s stood behind the counter, her silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a bright teal sweater and had the kind of smile that made you feel like you'd just been adopted into her family. You must be Diane, she said warmly. I'm Margaret. Welcome to Maplewood. Diane returned the smile, feeling some of her tension melt. Thank you. It's beautiful here. Margaret leaned over the counter to wave at the kids. And who are these 2 cuties? I'm Tyler, her son announced proudly. I'm 5. I'm Lily, her daughter added, clutching a stuffed bunny. I'm 4. Do you have dinosaurs? Margaret chuckled. Not yet, sweetheart. But we do have a playground. Lily considered this, then nodded. Okay. Margaret winked at Diane. You're going to fit right in. While Diane signed the last of the paperwork, the door swung open behind her, letting in a gust of cold air, and a man who looked like he'd stepped straight out of a home improvement commercial. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans dusted with sawdust. His hair was dark and slightly tousled, like he'd been wrestling with a stubborn piece of furniture. He carried a toolbox in one hand and radiated the kind of calm confidence Diane hadn't seen in years. Sean, Margaret said, her voice bright. Perfect timing. Come meet our newest resident. Sean set the toolbox down and offered a smile that was warm but not practiced, the kind that reached his eyes. Hi, you must be Diane. Diane stood, suddenly aware of the fact that her hair was a mess from the drive and her sweater had a suspicious granola bar stain. Yes, hi. She extended a hand, praying it wasn't clammy. Sean's grip was firm, his palm calloused. Welcome to Maplewood. I hope the drive wasn't too bad. Not at all, Diane lied smoothly, ignoring the memory of Lily singing the same cartoon song for 45 straight minutes. It's beautiful here. Sean glanced at the kids, his smile softening. And who do we have here? I'm Tyler, her son said, puffing out his chest like a superhero. I'm Lily, her daughter whispered, half hiding behind Diane's leg. Sean crouched to their level, his voice gentle. Nice to meet you both. Did you see the playground outside? Tyler's eyes lit up. Yeah. Can we go now? Soon, Diane said quickly before they bolted. Sean chuckled, standing. You're going to love it here. If you need anything, repairs, questions, whatever, just let me know. I'm usually around. Diane nodded, trying not to notice the way his flannel stretched across his shoulders. Focus, Summers. You're here for peace, not whatever that is. Margaret handed Diane a set of keys. You're in 2B, second floor, great view of the courtyard. Sean can show you where to park. Thanks, Diane said, juggling keys, paperwork, and Lily's bunny. Sean grabbed his toolbox. I'll walk you over. Outside, the cold air nipped at Diane's cheeks as they crossed the courtyard. Tyler darted toward the playground, and Diane had to call him back twice before he reluctantly returned. Popular spot, Sean said, nodding toward the slides. Kids love it. We've got a basketball hoop, too. And the garden. My mom runs that in the summer. Diane glanced at him. Your mom lives here? Yep, apartment 1A. She's the heart of this place. His tone held a mix of pride and affection that tugged at something in Diane's chest. She hosts exercise classes in the rec room. Keeps everyone moving. That sounds fun, Diane said, though the idea of doing squats in front of strangers made her want to fake a knee injury. Sean grinned, as if reading her mind. She's not scary, I promise. They reached her building, and Sean held the door open. Diane ushered the kids inside, their voices echoing in the stairwell as they raced up the steps. Second floor, Sean said, following with easy strides. You've got a balcony. Great for morning coffee. Morning coffee on a balcony. Diane pictured it. Sunlight spilling across the courtyard. Kids laughing below. Felt like a dream she hadn't dared to have. Apartment 2B was bright and airy, with freshly painted walls and hardwood floors that gleamed. The living room opened onto a small balcony overlooking the courtyard, and the kitchen was compact but modern, with stainless steel appliances that made Diane feel like she'd accidentally wandered into a cooking show. This is amazing, she breathed. Sean set his toolbox down. Glad you like it. Heat works, water pressure's good. If anything acts up, just holler. Tyler was already exploring, peeking into closets like he expected to find treasure. Lily twirled in the middle of the living room, her bunny clutched tight. Diane turned to Sean. Thank you, really. This place is exactly what we needed. Sean's smile was easy, genuine. That's what we're here for. Fresh starts. The words landed like a gentle nudge against her heart. Fresh starts. She'd said those same words to herself 100 times, but hearing them from someone else, someone who seemed to believe them, made them feel real. After Sean left, Diane stood in the middle of her new living room, keys dangling from her fingers. Tyler was begging to go to the playground. Lily was humming again, and boxes waited like silent soldiers along the wall. But for the first time in a long time, Diane felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Chapter 3. Settling in. By the time Diane wrestled the last box through the doorway, she was convinced cardboard was invented by someone who hated humanity. Her arms ached, her hair was a mess, and her sweater had acquired a new stain courtesy of Lily's juice box. But her apartment, was starting to look less like a storage unit and more like a home. Mommy, where does the TV go? Tyler asked, dragging a remote across the floor like it was a prized artifact. On the stand, Diane said, pointing to the empty space against the wall. But we're not setting it up yet. Tyler groaned. Why not? Because Mommy needs a minute to remember how to breathe, Diane muttered, collapsing onto the couch. It was the same couch from the old house, but here, in this bright living room with sunlight streaming through the balcony doors, it felt different, lighter, like it belonged to a new chapter. Lily climbed onto her lap, bunny in tow. Can we go outside now? Diane brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Soon, sweetheart. Let me finish unpacking a few things. Like the TV? Tyler piped up. Diane gave him a look. Like plates. So we don't eat dinner off paper towels. The apartment was quiet except for the kids' chatter and the occasional thud of a box being dragged across the floor. Outside, laughter drifted up from the courtyard. Children playing, parents chatting. It was a comforting soundtrack, one Diane hadn't realized she'd missed until now. She opened a box labeled kitchen and started stacking plates in the cabinet. They clinked softly, a sound that felt oddly satisfying. Progress, stability, normalcy. Mommy, Lily's voice was tentative. Do we have neighbors? Yes, Diane said, smiling. Lots of them. Can we meet them? Eventually, Diane promised. Let's get settled first. As if on cue, a knock sounded at the door. Diane froze, a plate in one hand. Tyler bolted to the door like a puppy on caffeine. Wait, Diane hissed, setting the plate down and wiping her hands on her jeans. She opened the door to find a woman about her age, wearing leggings and a sweatshirt that read Mom Life, powered by coffee. Her hair was in a messy bun, and she held a tray of muffins like a peace offering. Hi, the woman said brightly. You must be Diane. I'm Kelly. I live in 2A right next door. Diane blinked, then smiled. Hi. Wow, muffins. That's amazing. Kelly grinned. Maplewood tradition. New neighbors get carbs. It's how we say welcome. Tyler peeked around Diane's leg. Are those chocolate? Double chocolate, Kelly said, crouching to his level. You like chocolate? Tyler nodded so hard Diane worried his head might fall off. Kelly laughed and stood. You've got cute kids. Thanks, Diane said, feeling a rush of gratitude for the kindness. You didn't have to. Oh, trust me, I wanted to, Kelly said, waving a hand. We all remember what moving day feels like. Chaos with a side of exhaustion. Diane chuckled. That sounds about right. Kelly handed her the tray. There's a community barbecue tomorrow in the courtyard. You should come. Great way to meet everyone. Diane hesitated. Social events weren't exactly her comfort zone these days. But the kids, they needed this. And maybe she did too. Sounds fun, she said finally. Thanks, Kelly winked. See you there. And if you need anything, sugar, tape, moral support, just knock. After Kelly left, Diane set the muffins on the counter. Tyler was already reaching for one. Dinner first, Diane warned. Tyler groaned. But muffins are dinner. Nice try, Diane said, ruffling his hair. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of unpacking and negotiating with two small humans who believed playtime was a constitutional right. By 5 o'clock, Diane had managed to set up the kitchen, make the beds, and locate the sacred box labeled coffee maker. Victory. She stood on the balcony as the sun dipped behind the buildings, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The courtyard below buzzed with life. Kids chasing each other, parents chatting near the gazebo. Felt safe, like the world had shrunk to a manageable size. Mommy, can we go play now? Lily asked, tugging at her sleeve. Diane smiled. Yes, let's go. The playground was a riot of color, bright slides, swings that creaked softly, a sandbox dotted with plastic shovels. Tyler and Lily dove in like they'd been waiting their whole lives for this moment. Diane settled on a bench, watching them with a mix of relief and something that felt suspiciously like joy. First day? A voice said beside her. Diane turned to see a man in his 40s, wearing a baseball cap and holding a toddler who was gnawing on a teething ring. He smiled. I'm Mark, live in 3C. Diane, she said, shaking his hand. Nice to meet you. Welcome to the madhouse, Mark said with a grin. It's a good madhouse, though. Diane laughed. So far, so good. Mark nodded toward the kids. They'll love it here. Mine thinks this playground is Disneyland. Diane smiled, watching Tyler race down the slide. That's exactly what I need. As the sky darkened, Diane herded the kids back upstairs, their cheeks flushed and hair wild. She made a quick dinner, mac and cheese because moving day called for comfort food, and tucked them into bed. Lily fell asleep clutching her bunny, Tyler snoring softly within minutes. Diane stood in the doorway watching them. Her heart swelled with something fierce and tender. This was why she'd left. This was why she'd fought through the chaos. For this peace. For these smiles. Later, Diane curled up on the couch with a muffin and her laptop, scrolling through emails she'd ignored during the move. Bills, spam, a note from her mom asking for pictures. She typed a quick reply, we made it. The place is beautiful. The kids are happy. I think this was the right choice. She hit send and closed the laptop, sinking into the cushions. Outside, laughter drifted up from the courtyard, mingling with the hum of crickets. Diane closed her eyes and let it wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Chapter 4. The first spark. Diane stared at the flyer taped to the lobby bulletin board like it was mocking her. Morning stretch and strength, hosted by Margaret. All fitness levels welcome. The words were cheerful, the font bubbly, and the little cartoon dumbbell in the corner looked way too optimistic. Mommy, what's that? Tyler asked, tugging at her sleeve. An exercise class, Diane said, trying to sound casual while her inner voice screamed. Nope, hard pass. Abort mission. Are you gonna go? Lily asked, clutching her bunny like it was a co-conspirator. Diane opened her mouth to say absolutely not. But then she remembered Margaret's warm smile and Kelly's invitation to the barbecue. This was a community. She'd promised herself she'd try. Besides, how bad could it be? A few stretches, maybe some light weights. She could survive that. Maybe, Diane said, forcing a smile. It could be fun. Tyler grinned. Can we watch? No, Diane said quickly. You'll be in the playroom. The next morning, Diane stood in front of her closet, debating whether yoga pants were a sign of surrender or survival. She settled on black leggings and a loose t-shirt, hoping they said I'm approachable and not I'm here under duress. She tied her hair into a ponytail, grabbed a water bottle, and told herself this was about meeting people, not about fitness. Definitely not about fitness. The rec room was bright and airy, with mirrors lining one wall and a rack of colorful mats stacked neatly in the corner. Margaret was already there, wearing a neon pink tracksuit and radiating the kind of energy Diane usually associated with motivational speakers. Diane, you made it! Margaret beamed, waving her over. Grab a mat, dear. We're just getting started. Diane smiled weakly and picked a mat near the back, hoping to blend in. Around her, a handful of other parents were chatting, Kelly among them, looking effortlessly cute in patterned leggings. Diane tried not to feel like the awkward new kid at school. Okay, everyone. Margaret clapped her hands. Let's warm up those muscles. The first few stretches were fine. Diane could handle touching her toes, sort of. But then came lunges, and Diane's thighs started filing complaints. By the time Margaret announced squats, Diane was seriously considering faking a sudden injury. Feel the burn, Margaret chirped, bouncing like gravity didn't apply to her. Diane gritted her teeth and lowered herself into a squat, praying her knees didn't give out. She was halfway down when the door opened, and in walked Sean, carrying a toolbox like he owned the place, which technically he did. Diane froze mid-squat, her legs trembling. Sean glanced around, his gaze landing on her, and for one horrifying second, their eyes met. Diane's brain short-circuited. Abort, abort, abort. Morning, folks, Sean said, his voice warm and easy. Just here to fix the speaker. Margaret waved cheerfully. Perfect timing. We need music. Sean crossed the room, his flannel shirt stretching across his shoulders in a way that should have been illegal. Diane tried to focus on her breathing, but all she could think was, why does he have to look like that while I look like a sweaty pretzel? The speaker was on a shelf near the mirrors, which meant Sean had to crouch, giving Diane an uninvited view of muscles she had no business noticing. She stared at the floor, willing herself to become invisible. Almost done, Sean said, fiddling with wires. You'll have tunes in a minute. Margaret clapped her hands. You're a lifesaver, Sean. He smiled. Just doing my job. The speaker crackled to life, blasting an upbeat pop song. Margaret cheered. Perfect. Thank you. Sean turned to leave, but his gaze flicked to Diane again, just for a second, like a spark catching on dry wood. He smiled, a quick curve of his lips that felt personal. Then he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him. Diane exhaled, her heart doing a weird tap dance. Get a grip, Summers. You're here for lunges, not longing. The rest of the class was a blur of planks, push-ups, and Diane silently cursing whoever invented burpees. By the time Margaret called for cool-down stretches, Diane was sweating like she'd run a marathon. She collapsed onto her mat, staring at the ceiling and wondering if anyone would notice if she just lived there now. Kelly flopped down beside her, grinning. You survived. Barely, Diane muttered. Do people actually enjoy this? Kelly laughed. Give it time. Or just come for the gossip. Diane smiled weakly. Tempting. After class, Diane collected the kids from the playroom. Tyler was building a tower of blocks, and Lily was coloring a picture of what appeared to be a dinosaur wearing a tutu. Look, Mommy. Lily held up her masterpiece proudly. Diane chuckled. That's a very creative. As they walked back to the apartment, Diane's mind kept replaying that split-second smile from Sean. It wasn't flirty, not exactly. Just warm, friendly. But it had lodged itself in her brain like a stubborn song lyric. She shook her head. Nope, not going there. You have 2 kids, a new life, and 0 time for distractions. Still, when she passed the courtyard and saw Sean talking to a maintenance worker, her pulse did a little skip. She told herself it was just gratitude. He'd built this place, after all. A safe haven. That was worth admiring, right? Back in the apartment, Diane collapsed onto the couch while the kids argued over which cartoon to watch. Her muscles ached, her hair was a mess, and she smelled faintly of defeat. But beneath the exhaustion was something else, a flicker of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Not just because of Sean, because of everything. The laughter outside, the kindness of neighbors, the sense that maybe, just maybe, she'd landed in a place where life could be good again. She smiled to herself, ignoring the tiny voice whispering about flannel shirts and crooked smiles. Fresh starts. That was the plan. Chapter 5. Courtyard Chaos. The smell of grilled burgers drifted through the courtyard like a siren song, luring Diane out of her apartment with 2 kids in tow and a plate of hastily arranged fruit skewers. She debated bringing something fancier, maybe a pasta salad, but then Lily spilled juice on the recipe card. Tyler declared he was starving to death, and Diane decided fruit on sticks was good enough for government work. The courtyard was alive with chatter and laughter. Parents clustered near the barbecue pit, flipping burgers and hot dogs while kids darted between the playground and the basketball court like caffeinated squirrels. String lights twinkled overhead, giving the whole scene a cozy glow despite the winter chill. Wow, Tyler breathed, eyes wide. This is like a party. It is a party, Diane said, adjusting the plate in her hands. A community party. Do they have pizza? He asked hopefully. Not today, Diane said, smiling. But look, hot dogs. Tyler bolted toward the food table like a man on a mission. Lily followed, Bunny tucked under her arm like a VIP guest. Diane scanned the crowd, spotting familiar faces. Kelly waving from near the grill, Margaret chatting with a group of moms. And then her gaze landed on Sean. He was manning the barbecue like he'd been born to do it, spatula in hand, flannel sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that looked like they could bench press a small car. His hair was slightly mussed, his smile easy as he flipped a burger with practiced grace. Diane swallowed hard. Great. Flannel guy is here. And you look like you wrestled a fruit salad. Diane! Kelly appeared at her side, looking effortlessly put together in a chunky sweater and boots. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, Diane said, holding up her plate. Fruit skewers. Because I'm fancy like that. Kelly laughed. Perfect. Come on. I'll introduce you to a few people. Diane followed, weaving through clusters of parents while trying not to trip over a rogue soccer ball. She met a couple of moms who worked from home, a dad who taught high school science, and a grandmother who babysat half the complex. Everyone was friendly, warm, the kind of people who made you feel like you'd stumbled into a sitcom where neighbors actually liked each other. Half an hour later, Diane was perched on a bench near the gazebo, nibbling on a hot dog while keeping one eye on the kids. Tyler was playing tag with a boy named Max, and Lily was in the sandbox, building what looked like a castle for her bunny. Mind if I join you? A voice said. Diane looked up, and there was Sean holding a plate stacked with burgers like it was no big deal. Up close, he was even more annoyingly handsome, with that easy smile and eyes that crinkled at the corners. Sure, Diane said, scooting over. You're the grill master tonight? Sean chuckled, settling beside her. Margaret volunteered me. Says I have the touch. Diane smiled. Looks like you do. People are lining up. Free food tends to do that, Sean said, taking a bite of his burger. How are you settling in? Good, Diane said honestly. Better than I expected, actually. Glad to hear it, Sean said, his tone warm. That's what this place is for. Diane nodded, feeling that same flicker from yesterday, the one she kept trying to ignore. She focused on her hot dog like it held the secrets of the universe. And then it happened. Tyler, mid-tag, tripped over a sprinkler head and went sprawling, straight into the ketchup station. The bottle tipped, squirting a bright red arc across the table, and onto Sean's flannel sleeve. Oh my gosh! Diane jumped up, mortified. Tyler, are you okay? I'm fine, Tyler said, popping up like a jack-in-the-box. That was awesome. Diane grabbed a napkin and turned to Sean, who was inspecting his sleeve with mild amusement. I am so sorry, she said, dabbing at the stain like her life depended on it. He's usually, well, okay, he's never careful, but still. Sean laughed, low and easy. It's just ketchup. No harm done. Diane froze, napkin in hand, suddenly aware of how close she was. Close enough to smell the faint scent of soap and something woodsy. Her cheeks burned. She stepped back like the napkin had turned radioactive. Right? She said, forcing a laugh. Ketchup. No big deal. Sean smiled, eyes warm. Seriously, don't worry about it. Tyler bounded over, grinning. Did you see that, Mommy? I flew like Superman. You flew like a ketchup cannon, Diane muttered, handing him a wet wipe. Sean chuckled. Adds excitement to the party. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and small talk. Diane found herself relaxing, even enjoying herself. The kids were happy, the neighbors were kind, and the courtyard glowed under the string lights like something out of a movie. As the crowd thinned and parents started herding kids home, Diane gathered her things. Sean was stacking chairs near the gazebo, moving with easy efficiency. Need a hand? Diane asked before she could overthink it. Sean glanced up, smiling. Sure, thanks. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, the air crisp and filled with the distant sound of kids giggling. When the last chair was stacked, Sean wiped his hands on a towel and looked at her. Glad you came tonight, he said simply. Diane felt that flicker again, stronger this time, like a spark catching dry wood. She smiled, trying to keep it casual. Me too. Sean nodded, his gaze steady but not heavy. See you around, Diane. See you, she said softly. Back in her apartment, Diane tucked the kids into bed and collapsed onto the couch, her mind replaying the evening like a highlight reel. The laughter, the warmth, the ketchup incident. And Sean. His smile, his calm. The way he said her name like it mattered. She shook her head, grabbing a throw pillow and hugging it to her chest. Nope, not going there. You're here for peace, not sparks. But as she drifted off to sleep, one thought lingered like a whisper. Maybe sparks aren't so bad. Chapter 6. Unexpected Allies. Saturday morning started with a scream. Not Diane's, though she came close, but Tyler's, echoing through the apartment like a fire alarm. Diane bolted out of the kitchen, heart pounding, only to find her son standing in the middle of the living room, clutching a broken toy truck like it was a fallen comrade. It's ruined, Tyler wailed, his face crumpling. It's dead forever. Diane crouched beside him, inspecting the damage. The front wheel dangled by a thread, the axle snapped clean in two. She sighed. Buddy, it's not dead. It just needs fixing. Tyler's eyes brimmed with tears. Can you fix it? Diane hesitated. She could handle a lot. Packing boxes, navigating tantrums, surviving burpees, but mechanical repairs were not her forte. I can try, she said weakly. Tyler sniffled. Daddy used to fix stuff. The words landed like a pebble in Diane's chest, sending ripples of guilt through her. She forced a smile. Well, Mommy can learn. She spent the next 20 minutes wrestling with the truck and a screwdriver, only to make the situation worse. The wheel popped off entirely, and Diane muttered a word she hoped the kids didn't catch. "Mommy." Lily's voice was soft, curious. "Maybe the man with the flannel can fix it." Diane froze. "What? The man with the flannel?" Lily repeated, as if it were obvious. "He's nice." Diane blinked. "Sean, of course. The man who built this place probably fixed things in his sleep. But asking him for help felt complicated. Like admitting she couldn't do it all herself. Still, Tyler's tear-streaked face made the decision for her. "Okay," Diane said, standing. "Let's go find Mr. Flannel." The courtyard was buzzing with weekend energy. Kids playing tag, parents chatting near the garden. Diane spotted Sean near the basketball hoop, tightening a net with a wrench. His flannel was navy today, sleeves rolled up, forearms flexing with every turn of the wrench. Diane took a deep breath and approached, Tyler clutching the broken truck like a wounded soldier. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. "Got a minute?" Sean looked up, his smile easy. "Sure. What's up?" Diane held out the truck. "We have a situation." Sean took the toy, turning it over in his hands. "Front axle snapped," he said, like a doctor diagnosing a patient. "I can fix this." Tyler's eyes lit up. "Really? Really?" Sean said, crouching to Tyler's level. "But I'll need my toolbox. Want to help me?" Tyler nodded so hard Diane worried his head might detach. Sean glanced at Diane. "You okay with that?" "Of course," Diane said, relieved. "Thank you." They walked to the maintenance shed, Tyler chattering about trucks and superheroes while Sean listened patiently, asking questions like he genuinely cared. Diane followed, feeling oddly lighter, like someone had lifted a weight off her shoulders. Inside the shed, Sean set the truck on a workbench and pulled out tools with practiced ease. Tyler hovered like an eager apprentice, handing Sean screws and washers with solemn concentration. "You're good at this," Diane said, leaning against the doorframe. Sean smiled without looking up. "Grew up fixing things. My mom couldn't afford to hire help, so we figured it out together." Diane felt a pang of admiration, and something warmer. "That's impressive." Sean shrugged. "Just life." He tightened the last screw and held up the truck. "Good as new." Tyler gasped. "Awesome. You're like a superhero." Sean chuckled. "Just a guy with a wrench." Tyler hugged the truck like it had returned from war. "Thank you." Sean ruffled his hair. "Anytime, buddy." On the walk back, Diane felt a strange mix of gratitude and vulnerability. She wasn't used to asking for help. Not anymore. But Sean hadn't made her feel weak. Just human. "Thanks again," she said as they reached her building. Sean smiled. "Seriously, it's no problem. That's what I'm here for." Diane hesitated, then blurted, "You're good with kids." Sean's brows lifted slightly, but his smile didn't falter. "I like kids. They're honest. No games." Diane nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, no games." For a moment, their eyes met, steady, warm, like a quiet conversation without words. Then Tyler barreled past them, shouting about his super truck, and the spell broke. "See you around," Sean said, his voice easy. "See you," Diane replied, her heart doing that weird tap dance again. Back in the apartment, Diane watched Tyler race his truck across the floor, Lily cheering him on. The room buzzed with laughter, and for the first time in a long time, Diane felt safe. Not just because of the apartment or the courtyard, but because she wasn't alone. Not really. She thought about Sean. His calm, his kindness, the way he'd crouched to Tyler's level like it mattered. And she wondered, just for a second, what it would feel like to let someone like that in. Then she shook her head, grabbing a throw pillow and hugging it tight. "Nope, not going there. You've got enough on your plate." But as she tucked the kids into bed that night, one thought lingered like a whisper. Maybe asking for help isn't weakness. Maybe it's the start of something stronger. Chapter 7. A hint of vulnerability. The rain started as a whisper against the windows, soft, tentative, before turning into a full-blown drum solo. Diane stood on her balcony, watching fat drops splatter across the courtyard. The playground sat empty, its bright slides glistening like candy under a gray sky. String lights flickered in the mist, casting a dreamy glow over the puddles. "Mommy, the sky's crying," Lily announced solemnly from the couch, bunny tucked under her chin. "It's called rain, sweetheart," Diane said, smiling. "The sky's just watering the earth." Tyler peered out the window, his nose smushed against the glass. "Can we play in it?" "Not today," Diane said, eyeing the sheets of water cascading down. "Unless you want to turn into popsicles." Tyler groaned dramatically. "Worst day ever." Diane chuckled, ruffling his hair. "We'll find something fun to do inside." By mid-afternoon, the courtyard had transformed into a puddle paradise. Diane resigned herself to indoor chaos, pulling out board games and coloring books. The kids were halfway through a heated round of Candyland when a knock sounded at the door. Diane opened it to find Sean standing there, rain droplets clinging to his hair like tiny diamonds. He wore a gray hoodie instead of flannel today, but somehow managed to look just as annoyingly handsome. Hey, he said, his voice warm, powers flickering in a few units. Just checking if you're good. Diane blinked, momentarily distracted by the way his hoodie clung to his shoulders. Yeah, lights are fine. Good, Sean said, glancing past her. Looks cozy in here. Diane smiled wryly. Cozy or chaotic, depending on your definition. Sean chuckled. Mind if I come in for a minute? The rain's relentless. Sure, Diane said, stepping aside. Come on in. Sean shook off his hood and glanced around the living room. Tyler looked up from the game, eyes wide. Hey, it's the truck fixer. Sean grinned. That's me. Lily waved shyly, bunny in hand. Hi. Hi, Lily, Sean said gently, then turned to Diane. You surviving the storm? Barely, Diane said, gesturing to the board game battlefield. We've played Candyland so many times I'm starting to dream in gumdrops. Sean laughed, the sound low and easy. Rain days are tough. Tell me about it, Diane said, sinking onto the couch. I'm running out of ideas. Sean glanced at the kids, then back at her. You know, the rec room's open. A bunch of parents are hanging out there with their kids. Movies, snacks, the works. Diane hesitated. The idea of wrangling two sugar-fueled kids through a social gathering sounded exhausting. But then she pictured herself stuck here for another 3 hours, refereeing Candyland disputes, and decided snacks and movies sounded like heaven. Sold, she said. Let me grab shoes. The rec room buzzed with life. Kids sprawled on beanbags, parents chatting over coffee. A Disney movie playing on a big screen. Diane felt an unexpected wave of relief. This wasn't chaos. It was community. Sean helped her carry a tray of juice boxes to the snack table, his presence steady and reassuring. Diane noticed how easily he moved through the room, greeting people, fixing a wobbly chair, tossing a smile at a toddler who squealed his name. He belonged here, like the heartbeat of the place. Diane settled on a couch near the corner, watching Tyler dive into a pile of Legos, while Lily curled up with her bunny to watch the movie. For the first time all day, Diane felt herself exhale. Sean dropped onto the couch beside her, his hoodie damp at the edges. Not bad, huh? Not bad at all, Diane said, smiling. You really thought of everything when you built this place. Sean shrugged, his gaze on the kids. Just wanted somewhere families could feel safe. My mom worked 3 jobs when I was a kid. We lived in apartments that felt temporary. I wanted this to feel permanent. Like home. Diane studied his profile, the strong jaw, the faint shadow of stubble, the way his eyes softened when he talked about his mom. She must be proud. Sean's smile was quiet. I hope so. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Not awkward, but comfortable, like a shared blanket. Diane felt something shift inside her, a gentle tug she hadn't expected. She wanted to ask more, to peel back the layers of this man who seemed so solid, so good. Instead, she said softly, You did a good thing here. Sean turned to her, his gaze steady. You did too. Diane blinked. Me? Moving here, Sean said simply. Starting over. That takes guts. Diane swallowed, her throat tight. It didn't feel brave. It felt desperate. Sometimes desperate is just brave in disguise, Sean said, his voice low, certain. The words landed like a bomb on a wound Diane hadn't realized was still raw. She looked away, blinking back the sting in her eyes. Don't cry. Not here. Not now. As if sensing the shift, Sean leaned back, giving her space. So, he said lightly, how's Candyland treating you? Diane laughed, grateful for the lifeline. I've lost to a 5-year-old 3 times. My confidence may never recover. Sean grinned. I'll challenge him to basketball when the rain stops. Even the playing field. Good luck, Diane said dryly. He's competitive. I can handle competitive, Sean said, his smile teasing. Diane felt her cheeks warm and quickly looked away, pretending to watch the movie. But her pulse was doing that ridiculous tap dance again, and she hated how much she liked it. By the time the rain eased and parents started packing up, Diane felt lighter, like someone had cracked a window in her chest and let the stale air out. She gathered the kids, who were sticky with snacks and buzzing with excitement. Thanks for the tip, she said to Sean as they walked toward the door. This saved my sanity. Anytime, Sean said, his gaze warm. Seriously, anytime. Diane smiled, hugging Lily's bunny under her arm. See you around. See you, Sean said softly. Back in her apartment, Diane tucked the kids into bed and stood by the window, watching the last drops of rain slide down the glass. The courtyard glistened under the streetlights, puddles shimmering like tiny mirrors. She thought about Sean, his words, his steadiness, the way he'd looked at her like she wasn't just surviving, but doing something brave. And for the first time in years, Diane wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was. Chapter 8. The almost date. The text came on a Thursday afternoon, just as Diane was trying to convince Lily that socks were not optional in January. Sean. Hey, there's a winter fair in town this weekend. Rides, games, food. Thought you and the kids might like it. I can drive if you want. Diane stared at her phone like it had grown legs. Fair. With Sean. And the kids. Was this a date? Or just a friendly neighbor gesture? Her brain immediately launched into a spiral of overanalysis worthy of a courtroom drama. "Mommy, why are you making that face?" Tyler asked, peering up from his Lego fortress. "I'm not making a face," Diane said, shoving her phone into her pocket. "I'm thinking. About dinosaurs?" Lily asked hopefully. "Not dinosaurs," Diane muttered, grabbing her coffee like it held answers. She typed back after 5 full minutes of internal debate. "Diane, that sounds fun. The kids would love it. Thanks." Sean replied almost instantly. "Great. Saturday at noon?" Diane stared at the screen, her pulse doing that ridiculous tap dance again. "Sure," she typed, then added a smiley face, then deleted it, then added it back. Because apparently punctuation was now a matter of life and death. Saturday arrived with a sky so blue it looked photoshopped. Diane dressed the kids in their warmest coats, packed snacks, and spent an embarrassing amount of time debating her own outfit. Casual but cute, comfortable but not sloppy. She settled on jeans, boots, and a soft cream sweater that said "I tried, but not too hard." Sean pulled up in a dark gray SUV, looking annoyingly good in a black jacket, and that easy smile that made Diane's stomach flip. He hopped out to help with booster seats, moving with the kind of calm efficiency that made Diane want to take notes. "Ready for some fun?" he asked, his voice warm. "Absolutely," Diane said, praying her cheeks weren't as pink as they felt. The fair was a riot of color and sound. Twinkling lights, the scent of fried dough, music drifting from speakers. Tyler's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "This is awesome." Lily clutched Diane's hand, her gaze fixed on a carousel spinning like a dream. "Ponies," she whispered reverently. Sean grinned. "Looks like we've got priorities." They started with the carousel, because Lily's pleading eyes could have melted steel. Diane helped her onto a painted pony while Sean lifted Tyler onto a horse like it was nothing. Diane tried not to notice the way his jacket stretched across his shoulders, or the way her pulse jumped when his hand brushed hers as he steadied Lily. The carousel spun, music tinkling, kids laughing. Diane watched their faces light up and felt something warm bloom in her chest. This was what she'd wanted. Joy without drama. Laughter without tension. Next came the games. Tyler zeroed in on a ring toss booth, determined to win a giant stuffed shark. Diane handed over a few tickets, fully expecting failure, but Sean crouched beside him, offering tips like a seasoned coach. "Keep your wrist loose," Sean said. "Aim for the front peg." Tyler nodded solemnly, tossed the ring, and nailed it. The booth attendant handed him the shark, and Tyler hooped like he'd just won the Super Bowl. "You're magic," Diane said to Sean, half laughing. "Just physics," Sean said with a grin. Then came the cotton candy. Diane should have known better. She really should have. But Tyler begged, Lily pleaded, and Diane caved, only to end up with 2 sticky children and a sweater that looked like it had been attacked by a pink cloud. "Oh my gosh," Diane groaned, trying to wipe sugar off Lily's coat. "This stuff is evil." Sean chuckled, handing her a napkin. "Part of the fair experience. Part of the laundry nightmare," Diane muttered, dabbing at her sleeve. Sean grinned. "You wear it well." Diane froze, napkin in hand, her cheeks heating. Was that flirting or just friendly teasing? Her brain scrambled for a response, but before she could find one, Tyler shouted, "Mommy, bathroom, now." Cue chaos. Diane grabbed Lily's hand and sprinted toward the nearest restroom, Tyler barreling ahead like a tiny linebacker. By the time they returned, Diane was breathless, Lily was humming, and Tyler was announcing to anyone who'd listened that he'd survived the emergency. Sean was waiting near the Ferris wheel, hands in his pockets, smile easy. "Everything okay?" "Crisis averted," Diane said, laughing. "Parenting is glamorous, isn't it?" Sean's eyes crinkled. "You make it look easy." Diane snorted. "Trust me, it's not." They ended the day with the Ferris wheel, a decision Diane immediately regretted when she realized how high it went. But Tyler begged, Lily pleaded, and Diane caved again. Sean slid into the seat beside her, the kids across from them, and the wheel creaked into motion. The view was breathtaking. Snow-dusted rooftops, twinkling lights, the horizon stretching like a promise. Diane gripped the safety bar, trying not to think about gravity. "Not a fan of heights?" Sean asked, his voice low. "Not a fan of falling," Diane muttered. Sean smiled, steady and calm. "You're safe." The words were simple, but they landed like a warm hand on her heart. Diane glanced at him, and for a moment, just a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. His eyes were steady, his smile soft, and Diane felt something shift inside her, like a door cracking open. Then Lily squealed about spotting a pony from the air, and the moment shattered like glass. By the time they returned to the apartment complex, the kids were half asleep in the back seat, clutching their prizes like trophies. Diane unbuckled them, murmuring thanks as Sean helped carry bags to her door. "Thanks for today," Diane said softly. "They had a blast." Sean smiled, his gaze warm. "Me too." For a heartbeat, they stood there in the hallway, the air thick with something Diane couldn't name. Then Sean stepped back, his voice easy. "See you around, Diane." "See you," she whispered. "Later." After the kids were tucked in and the apartment was quiet, Diane curled up on the couch, her sweater still faintly sticky with cotton candy. She thought about the carousel, the Ferris wheel, the way Sean had said you're safe like it was a promise. And for the first time in years, Diane wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was ready to believe it. Chapter 9. Old Ghosts. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher and the distant giggles of Tyler and Lily playing in their room. Diane curled up on the couch with a mug of tea, savoring the rare moment of peace. The fair had been 2 days ago, but the memory still lingered. Bright lights, laughter, Sean's steady presence beside her. She'd replayed that Ferris wheel moment more times than she cared to admit. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Diane reached for it, expecting a text from Kelly or maybe her mom. Instead, the name flashing on the screen made her stomach drop like a stone. Rick. For a second, Diane just stared, her pulse thudding in her ears. She hadn't heard from him in months, not since he signed away his parental rights with all the enthusiasm of a man ordering a beer. She'd assumed he was off living his best bar-hopping life, far away from hers. She should ignore it. She wanted to ignore it. But her thumb betrayed her, swiping to answer before her brain could catch up. Hello. Her voice was tight, clipped. Diane. Rick's tone was casual, like they were old friends catching up. Hey. Diane gritted her teeth. What do you want? Just checking in, Rick said smoothly. Heard you moved. Diane's grip on the phone tightened. You heard? From who? Doesn't matter, Rick said. Just wanted to see how you're doing. Diane laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. You wanted to see how I'm doing? After months of radio silence? After signing away your kids like they were junk mail? Rick sighed, the sound heavy with fake regret. Come on, D. Don't be like that. Like what? Diane snapped. Like a mother who's been holding everything together while you play beer pong with your buddies? Silence crackled on the line, thick and ugly. Then Rick said, Look, I was thinking, maybe I could visit. See the kids. Diane's stomach twisted. No. Why not? Rick's voice sharpened. They're my kids too. They were your kids, Diane said coldly. You gave that up. Remember. Rick cursed under his breath. You're really gonna keep them from me? Diane's hands shook, anger and fear tangling in her chest. I'm going to protect them from you. Goodbye, Rick. She hung up before he could respond, her breath coming fast. The tea sat forgotten on the table, cooling in the silence. A knock sounded at the door. Diane jumped, her heart still racing. She crossed the room and opened the door to find Sean standing there, toolbox in hand, rain droplets clinging to his jacket. His brows furrowed when he saw her face. Hey, he said gently. Everything okay? Diane swallowed hard, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Yeah, fine. Just phone call. Sean studied her for a moment, his gaze steady but not intrusive. You don't look fine. Diane's throat tightened. She wanted to say I'm okay. She wanted to brush it off. But the words stuck like glue, and before she knew it, she was stepping aside. Come in, she said softly. Sean set the toolbox down and followed her to the couch. Diane sank into the cushions, her hands twisting in her lap. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of the dishwasher. Rick called, she said finally, her voice low. Out of nowhere. Sean didn't flinch, didn't ask for details. He just nodded, his expression calm. What did he want? To check in. Diane's laugh was bitter. Then he said he wants to visit the kids. Sean's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. Can he? No. Diane shook her head, anger flaring again. He signed away his rights. He didn't care then. Why now? Sean leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. People like that, they don't think about what they want until it's gone. Diane swallowed hard, her chest aching. I don't want him near them. Not after everything. Then he won't be, Sean said simply, like it was a fact carved in stone. Diane blinked at him, the steadiness in his voice washing over her like warm water. You sound so sure. Sean's gaze met hers, steady and calm. Because you're their mom. You make the rules, and you're not alone in this. The words landed like a lifeline, pulling Diane back from the edge. She felt her throat tighten, tears pricking her eyes. I hate that he can still get to me. Sean shook his head. That's not weakness. That's history. But history doesn't get to decide your future. Diane stared at him, her heart thudding. For a moment, the room felt smaller, quieter, like the world had narrowed to the space between them. His eyes were warm, his voice steady, and Diane felt something shift inside her. Something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Tyler's voice shattered the moment. Mommy, Lily stole my shark. Diane laughed, a shaky, unexpected sound, and wiped her eyes quickly. Parenting never takes a break. Sean smiled, rising to his feet. Go handle the shark crisis. I'll fix that leaky faucet while I'm here. Diane blinked. You don't have to. I want to, Sean said simply, grabbing his toolbox. And just like that, the storm inside her eased. Not because the problem was gone, but because someone was willing to stand in it with her. Later, after Sean left and the kids were tucked in, Diane curled up on the couch, her phone silent on the table. She thought about Rick, his voice, his empty promises, and felt nothing but resolve. Then she thought about Sean, his calm, his kindness, the way he'd said you're not alone like it was a truth she could lean on. And for the first time in years, Diane believed it. Chapter 10. The turning point. Sunday morning dawned bright and cold, sunlight spilling across the courtyard like liquid gold. Diane stood at the balcony door, sipping coffee and watching Tyler race his remote-controlled truck along the sidewalk below. Lily sat cross-legged on the rug behind her, humming softly as she dressed her bunny in a pink scarf. "Mommy." Lily's voice was sweet, curious, the kind that always made Diane brace for impact. "Yes, sweetheart." Lily tilted her head, her big brown eyes solemn. "Can Sean be our friend forever?" Diane blinked, nearly choking on her coffee. "What? Sean?" Lily repeated patiently, as if Diane were the slow one. "He's nice. He fixes stuff. He makes you smile." Diane's cheeks warmed. "He's a good friend, yes. So forever." Lily pressed, her tone serious, like this was a legally binding contract. Diane laughed softly, setting her mug down. "We'll see, sweetheart." But the question lingered long after Lily returned to her bunny. Friend forever. Diane told herself it was innocent. Kids said things like that all the time. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just Lily planting seeds. It was her own heart, whispering questions she wasn't ready to answer. The day passed in a blur of laundry, snack negotiations, and Tyler staging an epic battle between his shark and Lily's tutu-clad bunny. By late afternoon, Diane was folding towels when a knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Sean standing there, holding a small wooden box. His smile was easy, but his eyes held something quieter, something that made Diane's pulse skip. "Hey," he said. "Got a minute?" "Sure," Diane said, stepping aside. "Come in." Sean crossed the threshold, his jacket dusted with cold air. He set the box on the counter and opened it, revealing a neat row of tools and tiny screws. "Thought I'd fixed that loose cabinet hinge," he said. "Saw it the other day." Diane blinked. "You noticed my cabinet hinge?" Sean smiled faintly. "I notice things." The words were simple, but they landed like a pebble in Diane's chest, sending ripples through her calm. She swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "Thanks. That's thoughtful." While Sean worked, Diane busied herself wiping counters that didn't need wiping, her mind a whirl of questions. Why did his presence feel so steady? Why did his voice make her want to lean closer? And why, for the love of all things holy, did her heart do that ridiculous tap dance every time he looked at her? She was still pondering when Tyler barreled into the kitchen, shark in hand. "Sean, look, my shark can fly." Sean chuckled, catching the plush toy midair. "Impressive." Lily appeared next, bunny tucked under her arm. She peered up at Sean with solemn eyes. "Are you gonna stay forever?" Diane froze, her breath hitching. "Lily," Sean crouched, his expression gentle. "Forever's a long time," he said softly. "But I'll be around." Lily nodded, satisfied, and skipped off. Tyler followed, shouting something about shark superpowers. Diane stared at Sean, her heart thudding. "Sorry," she murmured. "Kids say things." Sean straightened, his gaze steady. "They're honest. That's what I like about them." Diane swallowed hard. "Yeah." The hinge was fixed in minutes, but Sean didn't leave right away. He lingered by the counter, his hands resting on the edge, his eyes on hers. "Diane," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" Her pulse jumped. "Sure. Are you happy here?" His voice was calm, but there was something beneath it, something that felt like more than casual curiosity. Diane blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, I think so. It's been good for the kids. For me." Sean nodded slowly. "Good. That's what I wanted." Diane frowned slightly. "What you wanted?" Sean's gaze held hers, steady and warm. "I built this place for families like yours, for people who needed a fresh start. I wanted it to matter." Diane felt her throat tighten. "It does," she said softly. "More than you know." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Not awkward, but charged, like the air before a storm. Diane's heart thudded, her breath shallow. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled in her chest. Sean broke the silence first, his voice low. "I like being around you, Diane." The words were simple, but they hit like a spark to dry wood. Diane's breath caught, her pulse roaring in her ears. "Sean, no pressure," he said quickly, his tone gentle. "I just wanted you to know." Diane stared at him, her heart a mess of fear and longing. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. She wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could let someone in without breaking. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you." Sean's smile was quiet, almost tender. Anytime. After he left, Diane sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. Lily's question echoed in her mind, "Can Sean be our friend forever?" And for the first time, Diane didn't have an answer. But she knew one thing. The door she'd kept locked for years had just cracked open, and she wasn't sure she wanted to close it again. Chapter 11. The big gesture. Monday morning was crisp and bright, sunlight glinting off the frost that clung to the courtyard garden beds. Diane stood at her balcony door, coffee in hand, watching the kids race each other to the playground. Tyler's laughter rang out like a bell, Lily trailing behind with her bunny tucked under her arm like a VIP guest. It should have felt ordinary by now, this quiet, this peace, but Diane still marveled at it. No slammed doors, no whispered arguments, no constant knot of tension in her chest. Just life, simple and good. She was halfway through her coffee when her phone buzzed with a text. "Sean, can you meet me in the courtyard in 10? Got something to show you." Diane blinked, her pulse skipping. Something to show you. Her brain immediately launched into a spiral of possibilities, none of which involved anything as mundane as a new sprinkler head. She typed back quickly, "Diane, sure. Be right down." The courtyard was quiet except for the distant squeak of swings. Sean stood near the garden beds, hands in his jacket pockets, his breath misting in the cold air. When he saw her, his smile was easy, but there was something in his eyes, something that made Diane's stomach flip. "Morning," he said. "Morning," Diane replied, tucking her hands into her coat pockets. "What's up?" Sean gestured toward the far corner of the garden, where a small plot had been cleared and framed with neat wooden borders. Fresh soil filled the space, dark and rich against the frost. Diane frowned slightly. "What's this?" Sean's smile softened. "It's yours." Diane blinked. "Mine? For you and the kids," Sean said, his voice warm. "A garden plot. Thought you might like to grow something this spring." Diane stared at the patch of earth, her throat tightening. "Sean, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said simply. "You mentioned the other day how much you missed fresh vegetables. Figured this might help make this place feel even more like home." Diane swallowed hard, emotion rising like a tide. It wasn't just the garden, it was what it meant. Someone had listened. Someone had cared enough to do something about it. "That's really thoughtful," she said softly. "Thank you." Sean shrugged, his smile quiet. "Just wanted to give you something that lasts." The words landed like a pebble in her chest, sending ripples through her calm. Diane looked at him, really looked, and for a moment the world narrowed to the space between them. His eyes were steady, his breath misting in the cold, and Diane felt something shift inside her, something she'd been holding back for far too long. Tyler's voice shattered the moment. "Mommy, can we plant carrots?" Diane laughed, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "Not today, buddy. It's too cold." "Spring," Sean said, crouching to Tyler's level. "We'll make it awesome." Tyler grinned. "Cool." Lily appeared next, bunny in tow. She peered up at Sean with solemn eyes. "Can we plant flowers too?" "Absolutely," Sean said, his smile gentle. "Lots of flowers." Lily nodded, satisfied, and skipped off toward the swings. Tyler followed, shouting something about super carrots. Diane watched them go, her heart swelling, and then turned back to Sean, her breath catching. "You didn't have to do this," she said again, her voice low. Sean's gaze held hers, steady and warm. "I wanted to," he repeated softly. "You deserve good things, Diane." The words cracked something open inside her, a door she'd kept locked for years. Before she could stop herself, she whispered, "Sean." He stepped closer, slow and careful, like he was giving her every chance to pull away. "Tell me if I'm wrong," he said quietly. Diane's breath hitched. "You're not." And then his lips were on hers, gentle, warm, tasting faintly of coffee and something sweeter. Tage. A kiss wasn't rushed, wasn't desperate. It was steady, like him, like a promise. When they broke apart, Diane's heart was pounding, her cheeks flushed. Sean's smile was soft, almost tender. "Been wanting to do that for a while," he murmured. Diane laughed, a shaky, breathless sound. "Me too." They stood there for a moment, the cold air swirling around them, the garden plot waiting like a symbol of something new. Diane felt lighter than she had in years, like someone had cracked a window in her chest and let the stale air out. For the first time since everything fell apart, she wasn't just surviving. She was starting to live. Chapter 12. Doubts and Decisions. Diane couldn't stop smiling, which was terrifying. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mug of coffee in front of her like it held answers. The kiss, that kiss, kept replaying in her mind, looping like a favorite song. Warm, steady, sweet. Everything she hadn't realized she'd been craving. And that was the problem. Because now, the doubts were creeping in like shadows at sunset. What if this is a mistake? What if I mess this up? What if the kids get attached and it all falls apart? Diane pressed her palms to her eyes, groaning softly. She'd spent years building walls, convincing herself she didn't need anyone. And now, one kiss had cracked those walls wide open, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for what came next. Her phone buzzed, jolting her out of her spiral. Mom flashed on the screen. Diane hesitated, then answered. "Hey. Hi, honey." Her mom's voice was warm, familiar, the sound of home. "How are you? How's the new place?" Diane swallowed hard. "Good. Really good." "That's wonderful," her mom said. "The kids sound happy in the pictures you sent." "They are," Diane said softly. "They love it here." Her mom paused, then asked gently, "And you? Are you happy?" Diane stared at the mug, her throat tight. "I think so. Think so." Her mom's tone was curious, not judgmental. "What's going on?" Diane hesitated, then blurted, "I kissed someone." There was a beat of silence. Then her mom laughed, warm and delighted. "Oh, honey, that's not a bad thing." "It feels like a big thing," Diane said, her voice shaky. "I wasn't planning on this. On anyone." Her mom's voice softened. "You've been through so much. It's okay to want something good." Diane blinked back tears. "What if it doesn't last? What if the kids get hurt? What if it does last?" Her mom countered gently. "What if this is the good thing you've been waiting for?" Diane's breath hitched. "I'm scared." "Of course you are," her mom said. "But fear doesn't mean stop. It means you care. And caring is brave." Diane closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. Caring is brave. She'd spent so long running from anything that looked like risk, anything that might break her again. But maybe, just maybe, she was strong enough to try. After the call, Diane sat in silence, her heart pounding. She thought about Sean, his steadiness, his kindness, the way he'd said you deserve good things like it was a truth carved in stone. She thought about the kids, their laughter, their joy. And she thought about herself, the woman who'd survived heartbreak, who'd built a new life from the ashes. Maybe it was time to stop surviving. Maybe it was time to start living. That evening, Diane bundled the kids into coats and headed to the courtyard. The air was crisp, the sky streaked with pink and gold. Tyler raced ahead, shouting about super carrots, while Lily twirled with her bunny like a tiny ballerina. Sean was near the garden beds, stacking wooden stakes. When he saw her, his smile was quiet, almost tentative, like he wasn't sure where they stood. "Hey," he said. "Hey," Diane replied, her breath catching. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the air thick with unspoken words. Then Diane took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking." Sean's brows lifted slightly. "Yeah. About us," Diane said, her voice low. "About what this could mean." Sean set the stakes down, his gaze steady. "And," Diane swallowed hard, "and I'm scared. But I don't want that to stop me." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then Sean's smile broke, slow and warm, like sunlight through clouds. "I'm scared too," he said softly. "But I think it's worth it." Diane felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been wound tight for years. She smiled. A real smile, bright and unguarded. "Me too." Tyler's voice shattered the moment. "Mommy, can we plant the carrots now?" Diane laughed, blinking back tears. "Not yet, buddy. Soon." Sean chuckled, his eyes crinkling. "Spring's going to be busy." Diane met his gaze, her heart steady for the first time in years. "I'm ready for busy." And for the first time since everything fell apart, Diane wasn't just hoping for a fresh start. She was choosing it. Chapter 13. Fresh Starts. The first day of spring arrived like a promise, soft sunlight spilling across the courtyard, a breeze carrying the scent of thawed earth and something sweet. Diane stood on her balcony, coffee in hand, watching Tyler and Lily race toward the garden beds with squeals of delight. Their laughter floated up like music, mingling with the hum of life below. The garden plot Sean had given them sat waiting, dark soil rich and ready. Tyler clutched a packet of carrot seeds like treasure, while Lily carried a tiny watering can and her ever-present bunny, now sporting a floral scarf for the occasion. Diane smiled, her chest warm. This was what she dreamed of: peace, laughter, a life without drama, and maybe, just maybe, something more. Sean was already in the courtyard, stacking wooden stakes near the garden. He looked up when he saw her, his smile slow and easy, the kind that made Diane's pulse skip no matter how many times she told herself to stay calm. "Morning," he called. "Morning," Diane replied, descending the steps with a basket of gardening gloves and snacks. "Ready to supervise two very enthusiastic farmers?" Sean chuckled. "Always." Tyler barreled toward him, waving the seed packet like a victory flag. "We're planting super carrots." Sean crouched, his grin matching Tyler's excitement. "Super carrots, huh? Better make sure they have super soil." Lily appeared next, solemn as a judge. "And flowers," she said firmly. "For Bunny." Sean nodded gravely. "Flowers for Bunny. Got it." They worked side by side, laughter mingling with the rustle of soil and the chatter of kids. Diane knelt in the dirt, her hands sinking into the cool earth, while Sean hammered stakes with easy strength. Every so often, their eyes met, brief, warm, charged with something that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. When the last seed was tucked into the soil and Lily had ceremoniously blessed the flowers with her watering can, the kids dashed off to the playground, leaving Diane and Sean alone by the garden. Diane brushed dirt from her gloves, her heart thudding. "Thanks for helping," she said softly. "They loved this." Sean smiled, his gaze steady. "I loved it too." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Not awkward, but full, like the pause before a song begins. Diane felt the weight of everything. The kiss, the doubts, the choice she'd made to stop running. And she knew what she wanted. "Sean," she said, her voice low, About the other day. Sean's brows lifted slightly, but his expression stayed calm. Yeah. Diane swallowed hard. I meant what I said. I'm scared. But I don't want that to stop me. Sean's smile broke, slow and warm, like sunlight spilling across the earth. Me neither. And then he kissed her, soft at first, then deeper, like roots sinking into soil. Diane melted into it, her hands curling into his jacket, her heart pounding with something fierce and tender. When they broke apart, breathless, Sean rested his forehead against hers. Been wanting to do that again, he murmured. Diane laughed, a bright, unguarded sound. Me too. Tyler's voice shattered the moment. Mommy, Lily says Bunny needs a swing. Diane groaned, laughing. Parenting never takes a break. Sean chuckled, his eyes crinkling. Guess we'll have to schedule our moments. Diane smiled, her chest warm. I'm okay with that. Later, as the sun dipped low and the courtyard glowed under string lights, Diane sat on a bench watching the kids play. Sean was beside her, his arm draped casually along the backrest. Not possessive, just steady, like everything about him. For the first time in years, Diane felt whole. Not because life was perfect, it wasn't. There would still be tantrums and bills and days when everything felt upside down. But there would also be laughter. Peace. Love that didn't hurt. She glanced at Sean, her heart swelling. Thank you, she said softly. For what? He asked, his voice warm. For this, Diane said, gesturing to the courtyard, the garden, the kids chasing each other under the fading light. For reminding me that good things still exist. Sean's smile was quiet, almost tender. You deserve good things, Diane. And for the first time, she believed him. As the kids tumbled into her lap, giggling and sticky from popsicles, Diane looked around, the garden waiting to bloom, the laughter echoing through the courtyard, the man beside her who felt like home, and thought, fresh starts aren't just about leaving the past behind. They're about choosing joy, even when it scares you. And maybe, just maybe, letting someone in to share it.